Hey there, guitar fanatics. If you're watching my channel, it's probably because you're trying to learn about and get better at playing solos and improvising. You're probably working really hard at developing technique, and I understand that pursuit. After all, we've got to have notes to play, right? And guitar is an instrument that is very technique focused. The players who have awesome technique often get a lot of attention for the gymnastic aspect of what they can play. But oddly enough, there's a little secret that separates players at any level, from the most down-home blues player to the craziest super shredder. And it's the real difference between players that seem to make the guitar speak and players that we hear and we go, nice licks, but I'm just not feeling it. And that's phrasing. Phrasing is like the icing on a musical cake. The little extra ingredient on top that makes you sound more polished, more professional, and more expressive. Today, I'm going to show you how just one aspect of phrasing can totally breathe new life into your sound. We're going to look at several different ways of using this phrasing technique and how to practice it, and how incorporating this one phrasing element into techniques you're probably already using can lead to countless variations on cool licks and phrases. Let's get into it and play some guitar. So what exactly is phrasing? Well, I would say it's the nuances we add to the notes we play to make a plank of wood with some wire on it sound more like a human voice. We're literally trying to make our guitar sing. And great singers don't just land on every note perfectly like robots. They slide in and out of notes. They bend the pitches that they sing sometimes. And of course, vocalists can use vibrato to great effect. Slides, bends, and vibrato, well, those are the big three elements in guitar phrasing also. And today, we're going to concentrate on slides. Now, we can use slides in all kinds of different ways. We can use them to make our guitar sound like an airplane engine, or we can use them in ways that make it sound like, well, we're playing slide guitar. We're going to start off with some easy but very expressive techniques. Let's go. Now, the first thing I want you to start practicing is using slides to play phrases on one string. Now, a couple of technique aspects of slides. When we're playing a slide on guitar, we're simply moving from a starting point to a target note. And rather than fretting the target note cleanly like this, we slide into that target note from a point above or below. And when we slide, it's critical to keep pressure on the string. If we let our pressure off, the note will die out. Here's another key component to phrasing with slides. We can play slides that have a definite rhythmic value. Here's a little pentatonic lick played normally. And here's that same lick played with a slide into each note. And we can also play slides that are grace notes. And now, what's a grace note? A grace note happens very quickly before the actual target note. And often, they're not even recognizable as their own pitch, but more of an embellishment or a way of articulating our actual target note. Here's a three-note phrase played picking each note. And here it is picking the first note and sliding into the next two. And this last time I played it, I'm going to do a grace note slide from below into the first note and a grace note slide from above into the third note. As you can hear, it doesn't change the rhythm, but it changed the attack, and it's very expressive. More on that later. Let's practice sliding into all the notes of the A minor pentatonic scale on one string, and G string's as good as any. We've got A, C, D, E, G, A again, C again, D, and E. And there's a number of different ways that we could play just these notes. We can focus on two notes at a time. We're going to pick a starting note and slide into the next note of the scale. And we could do that for each note all the way up and down the fretboard. Jimi Hendrix used this technique in one of the solo sections of All Along the Watchtower. Cool sound. Now we could focus on two notes. We would pick the first note, slide into the second note, and then back to our starting note. That's a cool sound, and I can already start hearing possibilities for creating licks and phrases. How about three notes at a time? Here's where we can start to get some slide guitar phrasing happening. We're going to pick the first note, say the C at the 5th fret of the G string, hammer onto the second note, which would be D at the 7th fret, slide into the E at the 9th fret. We're going to pause there an instant with a little vibrato, and we're going to make a really quick sliding motion down to that second note, the D, and then back up into the third, and then just as quickly slide back into the second note. And then we're going to pull off to the first note of the three-note pattern. Very Derek Trucks sounding. We can take that fake slide guitar thing one step further by combining a pair of three-note patterns like this. Now we just played our lick with the C, D, and E at frets 5, 7, and 9. Let's use our index finger like it's a real slide and slide from fret 5 to 7 and back. And then we're going to slide down to A at the 2nd fret and then back up into the C at fret 5. Put that whole thing together, we have this. Compare how that sounds to how it would sound if I picked every note versus playing it with our faux Derek Trucks thing. A world of difference. We could also practice wide interval slides, skipping over a note or two and sort of zigzagging our way back and forth. That's another great sound. And just with what we've covered so far, you could stay busy for a long time making up licks and phrases. Another thing you might have noticed is that anytime I pause on a note for any length of time, I added some vibrato. And this serves two purposes. It helps to keep the string ringing, and adding that vibrato makes our licks sound more like an authentic slide guitarist. And now that was just using the notes of the pentatonic scale on one string. But of course, you could use the notes of the major scale or any other scale. Or how about arpeggios on one string? Here's an A major triad. Here's A minor triad. How about A major 7 on one string? Here's A minor 7. Once again, you're just limited by your imagination. Learning to play phrases on one string is a super valuable skill that more or less forces you to get creative with your phrasing. Let's move on and use some slides to enhance and embellish techniques that move across the strings like scales and arpeggio shapes. How about taking this little E minor triad shape at frets 9, 8, and 7 of the G, B, and E strings? That's an E note, a G note, and a B note. And we could extend that into an E minor 7 by adding the D note at fret 7 of the G string and the D and E notes at frets 10 and 12 of the high E. And it would be pretty common to hear somebody play that with a combination of hammer-ons and sweep picking. And the first 3 times you hear something like that, you go, wow, that's really cool because it's fast. But after about the 10,000th time that you've heard it, it sort of clicks in that it's just a mindless pattern that some players will use because they're too lazy to get more creative. What if instead we slide into the D at fret 10 on the E string from above, and then slide from there into the E at fret 12? We're going to do a downward grace note slide with our index finger into the B at fret 7. We're going to play the G at fret 8 of the B string and the E at fret 9 of the G string. And now we're going to combine a pull off of fret 9 to fret 7 with an upward slide back to fret 9. That's kind of a Jeff Beck thing. And we're going to finish the phrase with an exaggerated grace note slide where we're going to move very quickly upward from that E note at the 9th fret and then slide down into the D at fret 7. Putting that whole thing together. There's way more emotional content in that slidey lick. And the difference between playing like this and what I referred to as that mindless sweeping pattern is that you can totally go on autopilot and shred. You just run up and down scale patterns or sweep some arpeggios. But to play with good end phrasing, you have to stay mentally engaged. You have to give each note that you're playing your full intentionality. And that's actually really hard to do, which is why you have to practice it. You have to get comfortable hearing and applying these different techniques, especially if you're improvising a solo. Let's try another shape of that E minor 7th arpeggio at the 7th fret area. Now here's our shape, and it's another great one for shredding because it flows and it's easy to combine sweep picking and hammer-ons. Something like this if I wanted to shred. And that kind of thing is cool sometimes, but how about taking that shape and using some slides to make an expressive phrase? Let's start out on the G at the 8th fret of the B string. And here's another different slide technique. We're going to pull off to the F sharp at fret 7, and we're going to make a quick slide to the G and back to F sharp. In essence, we're playing the same notes as if we did a trill, but we're doing it with that first finger slide. That's a technique that we'll see super tasty shredder Nick Johnston use a lot. Also check out the very expressive Welsh guitarist Chris Buck to hear someone use this technique really well. From there, we're going to play E, D, and E at frets 9 and 7 of the G string. And then we're going to grace note slide into the B at fret 9 of the D string. And then a quick up and back exaggerated zigzag slide into the G at fret 5. We're going to hammer on to the A at fret 7. We're going to slide up into the E at fret 7 of the A string. And then another sort of zigzag grace note slide down to the D at fret 5. Pretty cool, very expressive sounding. And the shreddy licks, well, there's still a place for those for sure. But when you mix them up with this more intentional, emotional style of playing and phrasing, well, it just takes your licks and lines to another level entirely. Lastly, let's embellish a scale pattern by adding some slides to break up that linear, scaly, for lack of a better word, sound. We're going to incorporate two different techniques. The first one is a subtle slide with our index finger that allows us to play 4 notes on a string. On the high E string, we're going to pick the note at the 7th fret and slide into fret 8, hammer on and pull off frets 10, 12, 10, and 8, and slide back into the B at fret 7. We're going to pick the A note at fret 10 of the B string and then pull off to frets 8 and 7. Slide into fret 8 and then hammer on and pull off frets 10 and 12. And then we're going to slide back into the 7th fret. We're going to go to the G string. We're going to pick fret 11 and pull off to frets 9 and 7. We're going to pick fret 10 of the D string and then pull off to fret 9. We're going to do our trill slide to fret 10 and back, and then pull off fret 9 to fret 7. We're going to do the same move on the A string. And then we're going to switch things up and we're going to play a horizontal pentatonic pattern, sliding fret 10 to fret 12 on the low E. We're going to pick fret 10 on the A string, hammer onto fret 12 and slide into fret 14. Play frets 12 and 14 on the D string, frets 12 and 14 on the G string and slide into fret 16. And then we're going to do our zigzag slides into the notes of an E minor 7th arpeggio. We're going to start at the B at fret 16 of the G string. We're going to slide to fret 12, that's a G note. Then E at fret 9. And end up on the D at fret 7. The whole lick slowly, well, it sounds like this. So instead of just a scale run, now we've got this slippery, slidey, back and forth sounding lick that still has plenty of speed. But it's more than just that. There's some real intentionality here, and we're making an effort to be more creative. So slides, well, that's just one aspect of phrasing. If you enjoyed this video, let me know, and we'll get into how to practice the other phrasing elements so you can really start making this guitar talk. Until then, work hard, have fun, never stop playing and learning. I'll see you soon.